Joe, thanks. Let's discuss now. We're joined by Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, Republican lawmaker and State Senator John Kavanaugh, and Democratic lawmaker Janelle Cavero. Good to see all of you, and happy early Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having
appreciate
us.
your coming down. All right, I understand, and I'm sure you all do too, the frustration of the voters who think back to the good old days when you would know the results of an election by the end of the night. Could it be easier than it is here, Mr. Fontes?
It could be easier if the margins were wider and the math worked out the way that you say that we can have those results early. Right now, we've got really tight margins. But here's the thing. When Senator McCain was winning by 25, 30 points, we knew on election night. Now we have tighter margins. So the same exact system really is giving us no different results in actuality. It's our impatience. It's our desire to get that immediate gratification. That's where the problem lies. And so we really need to stop the dog getting wagged by its own tail, and we need to decide, do we still want our solid, secure, well accounted for elections like we've always had, or do we just want it quicker? And if that's what we want, then maybe we can make some
You're
changes.
saying you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Well, you can, but it's going to cost you a bunch of money. And I know my good friend over here probably isn't going to be too happy about that.
Well, what about it, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Well, he's correct. We've been slow counting for a long time. But it's a problem now because, unfortunately, we are no longer the red-hot state that we were, where on election night, even with a small number of ballots in, you knew that the Republicans were winning because we were a Republican state. We become a swing state, and the margins are tight, like you said, and that's why it stays up in the air. But it's not just the voters of Arizona who are impatient. We're kind of an embarrassment to the whole country. When the votes are tight and we're still counting 2 weeks after the election, people get upset. And thank God this year it wasn't a close election for the presidency. But can you imagine if the presidency was razor thin and we could not give the world was watching, we could not give the world the results for over a week? It would have been a disaster.
So what would your fix be?
Well, Senator Mesnon introduced a bill which said if you have an early ballot that you didn't mail in and you come to the polls on election day, you've got to step up to the table, get the signature verified. They would then mark that on the envelope, put it in a bin, and when it went to the tabulation center or the election center, they wouldn't have to do the signature verification, which eats up some of the time. Of course, this election, I was talking to Gina Swoboda, who was kind of the head of the Republican watchers. Another problem we had was getting the ballots out of the envelopes. So what I think the true solution is, and the Secretary alluded to this, is if you have an early ballot and you come in on election day, not only are you verified that you're the voter, but it's tabulated there. Now, that would require some money. I'm not sure, and I'd like to study this, if it would be that much, because some people think that we could make revisions to the software of the programs and still use the early ballots in the tabulators at the election site. We therefore would not have to buy additional tabulators.
Ms. Cavero, today County Supervisor Thomas Galvin called on state lawmakers to do away with the late early. So if you want a mail-in ballot and you don't want to mail it in, you have to drop it off in the ballot box by the time that those mail-in ballots are mailed. Would you support that?
I mean, it's an unfortunate situation. If you drop in your ballot by a required date, you're disenfranchising a ton of voters. And no, I wouldn't support that. I think that, the priority is the voter. And today, any form of disenfranchisement or a suppression, this defeats the whole democracy. And so supporting such holding dates or required dates, as much as it would sound great, it really is a detriment to our process.
Do you think, though, based on the complaints you hear, maybe from your constituents, I know I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you all do too, that something should be done to expedite the process?
Well, I mean, in the last legislature, we just passed a bill that would hopefully expedite some of the process with, showing your driver's license versus getting, signature verified. We don't know. I mean, we really need to test out the system in 26 and more importantly, tinker the process a little bit better for our next presidential. Now, if whatever comes of it, at the end of the day, it's the priority is the voter and ensuring that it's an accurate, safe system. And we have that here in Arizona.
Mr. Fontes, based on the current climate that we have, which is very divisive, Do you think that we dodged a bullet in terms of voter mistrust because there was such a clear winner when it came to the race for president?
Well, I think part of it has to do with the political outcome, as you allude to. But I think a big part of it is that we continue to do right by our voters. We continue to give them more access than most voters have across the United States of America. They vote in more ways. We provide this convenience, and that's a really good thing. What I think we need to do is to kind of take a step back from this excitement about fast results. We need to be reasonable and thoughtful about how to get there.
Hold on.
And
Don't people have a right? Isn't that, it's not an unrealistic expectation to think if I put in the time to vote, which is my right as a U.S. citizen, then I should have a right to know whether the candidate that I voted for won within a reasonable amount of time.
Well, that's the thing. It is not unreasonable for us to continue to do the great work that we've done. Now, if we want to shift those expectations, and to use your words, not be the embarrassments, which I don't think we are, I think that we should really consider some of these issues. Now, here's the great thing. The legislature, Democrats and Republicans, have a partner in me who's willing to have this conversation. But here's the hook. We need to have a level-headed, reasonable, affordable approach that's not going to curtail access. The minute you start saying we're going to take this capacity for voters to vote away, then you're going to have a problem with me. But until then, I say let's put our solutions on the table and have that conversation.
In terms of great performance, if you're spelling it G-R-A-T-E, then you're right, because everybody was grating their teeth because the results weren't in. Look, the solution is to get those ballots processed at the polling place when people bring the early ballots in early. We had a bill that would have required them to check in. Governor Hobbs vetoed it. We can bring that bill back. And in addition, I would like to start a study, and we can cooperate on that, to see what would it take to get the machine set up where you could put your mail-in ballot in on election day and tabulate it. That is the ultimate solution. And quite frankly, I have no problem spending money, even if we have to buy additional tabulators, because, you know, it's an important thing. It's about democracy. And the counties can certainly chip in, because I look at their budgets, I look at their line items, and somehow I don't think that at the very bottom is expeditious results on the election.
Well, I think one of the things that's important here is I think we've only got 2 or 3 counties in Arizona who have polling place tabulators. So you're talking about buying tabulators for the vast majority of the polling
Are
places.
you willing to write that check, Mr. Kavanaugh?
I'm willing to share it with the other people responsible for elections.
Number two, and I think this is, okay, let's have the dialogue. We have 0 sustained federal funding for any election activities, and this is federal critical infrastructure as deemed by the Department of Homeland Security. So you've got federal ballots, federal rules, 0 federal funding. So somehow or another, the taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill for this. But I'm with you there, Senator and Representative. Let's have the conversation and figure this out. If it is a priority, then let's solve the problem.
But if my staff is correct, and you would know better, you do still have HAVA money from the federal government that we could use for this equipment.
We do. We do have some, but
Well, we just found some cash.
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, using effective machines that are accurate, I'm fully supportive, and I'm sure most of the caucus would be too. But again, yes, expediting it would be great without fault and with any issues with these machines.
But voters have to understand that if you don't mail your early ballot in early, you're going to be on a line. Hopefully expeditious to tabulate, but you're going to be on a line. And that might be a problem the first year, but those who held onto their ballot and had to wait on a line will probably mail their ballot early in the future elections.
I have to ask one question before we go. It's off topic, and I'm not trying to ambush you, but Politico just broke that the Democratic Party in Arizona has approached you about a possible run for governor. Do you want to comment on that?
no, I don't. But thanks for asking.
You know what? I'm just doing my job.
If you didn't ask, you wouldn't be doing your job. But
Good to see you all. Thank you for this is a big issue. It's probably not going to go away, but hopefully we can get this figured out. We'll be right back.